You are listening to Influencers from the Conference Board.
Welcome to Influencers. I'm Craig Carroll, Communications Institute leader here at the Conference Board, lecturer in the Jones Graduate School of Business at Rice University, and executive director of the Observatory on Corporate Reputation. Today I'm speaking with three senior fellows for the Marketing and Communications Center here at the Conference Board. Kelly Semrau, former Senior Vice President, Global Corporate Affairs, Communication, and Sustainability at SC Johnson. Devry Boughner of Vorwerk, former Corporate Vice President, Global Corporate Affairs at Cargil, and CEO of DevryBV Sustainable Strategies. Jessica Edelman, former Group Vice President of Corporate Affairs for the Kroger Company. And our topic today is the COVID-19 reset, companies, and the compass. So Kelly, we're going to start with you. So many companies today are so focused, as they need to be, on the here and now, where we are at this moment, not next quarter, not next year, but in this mode of survival, thinking about what role that they're playing in terms of just simply getting through the week and taking care of just the basic demands that they need to take care of. So let's just start there, right? What are some of the things that we can expect for companies here in terms of how to get through this?
Well, I've been seeing some great work and great things that companies are doing. Some of the things that I've begun to see is at first we saw silence, and many of us were saying, come on, CEOs, get out there, get on the front line. And we saw a plethora of CEOs out there. But I've begun to see something that I think is incredible. Companies now are putting their employees out on the front line and they're talking their purpose. I believe now is the time to talk about how your brand and your company are contributing to society's purpose to help us get through this. I think that can redefine how we trust capitalism, American business, global business, because I do think business is going to get us out of the crunch that we're in.
Now, Kelly, how can this be done in a way that, as we discussed on a previous episode, right, there's a concern about mixing marketing messages with public health messages, right? How can this be done in a way that is, is responsible, it's tasteful, it's meeting the needs of people?
Whenever I run a team, I drive my teams crazy because I always say, what is the problem we're trying to solve? I do that with a campaign, a headline, an event, anything. What is the problem we're trying to solve? Right now, we are absolutely trying to solve a problem of getting masks, ventilators, people back home. And, those companies or brands that are really trying hard to communicate how they're doing that are going to come out on the other end. United Airlines, I think they've done a phenomenal job. They've changed their logo, United Together. They have so many different stakeholder groups that they're trying to ladder that purpose up, and they're doing a great job. I imagine they are working hard to make sure that in DC they're getting the legislation that they need. They're working with their unions, they're furloughing people, they're trying to motivate their employees. But at the same time, they're bringing, citizens, U.S. citizens that are stranded in foreign countries home. They're ferrying medical supplies, but they're writing me. I have been a United flyer in that upper tier forever. And I'm proud of them. I'm proud of what they're doing. So, I'm sure they'll make a mistake at some time, but they're making sure that I'm in it with them. To me, that's what every brand has to do right now. How do you get me in it with you, on the front lines with you? I
Yeah,
think that's perfect.
yeah. So now you were talking about purpose here, right? So we can think about corporate purpose, but we can also think about social purpose, and in a best case scenario, they're one and the same. But Devry, I'm going to ask you, right? What can we expect from society here when we're hearing companies focus so much on their purpose here? What are society's expectations for corporate purpose?
Well, I think we're seeing society's expectations play out in real time. And prior to COVID-19 becoming a pandemic, there were a lot of discussions going on around the role of capitalism and companies in society, and companies serving something greater than themselves, and this notion of stakeholder capitalism versus shareholder capitalism. And what we're seeing at the moment is that citizens are watching. Citizens are absolutely watching and experiencing companies in action. And at this particular moment in time, I do believe it's a moment for capitalism to come to the forefront in a way that that can yield positive outcomes for companies. And when Kelly just mentioned that each company is having to kind of grapple with this for themselves, and my thought here is that the companies that come out of this and not only do well now, but on the back end of this, are the ones that continue to be forthcoming with the why. Why are they taking certain actions? Why would they want or need a bailout? Why are they taking certain actions with their employees in terms of putting some on furlough versus paying their employees while they're not working? What's really important in this moment, so that companies can show that they're living into their societal purpose, is to explain the why they exist and the why they're taking certain actions.
I'm going to push back just a little, right? I mean, we can think about on this broadcast here, right? Companies getting to the other side, and when we come through this, which ones are going to be remembered. But there's so many companies right now on the tipping point of just simply getting through this. How do we reconcile those ideas where maybe even pursuing some of these ideas might mean the very survival or not survival of the company? Devry?
Well, I think the explaining the why is about the survival of the company. What's happening is citizens are experiencing certain changes in their relationship with these companies. The supply chains are shifting hourly, and so the notion that that we would be separating companies, explaining the why around their purpose from what they're in right now is I think that it's happening. It's concurrent.
Mhm.
And so this is the moment for companies to shine, even while they're being constrained. And this is the moment for companies to really live into their purpose and their brand by explaining the actions that they're taking in this very moment.
I'm just curious. I mean, are there any examples of companies that might be putting aside their corporate purpose in order to focus on getting through this and helping society, right? Instead of pursuing such a commercial focus that it's about really helping their neighbors or helping out in some other way that might be off of what they normally do. Uh, Devry, Jessica, your
Yeah,
thoughts on that?
I think we're seeing examples of that come, where you're seeing the fashion industry repurpose some of their, some of their efforts to make masks. We're seeing, and here in Minnesota, you're seeing local companies thinking about, how do we shift in a day to make these plastic masks that can cover, healthcare workers' faces, so that their N95 masks can last longer. We're seeing example after example, and absolutely collecting those examples. I mean, I think what's important to know is that the world is watching, and there's a collection of those that are taking place. Kelly mentioned one particular airline. I mean, the airline industry in particular is having to explain its purpose in society in a moment when people aren't traveling. And so what you're
Mhm.
seeing is that every company is having to ask themselves the question: how do we explain our role in society at the moment, given that maybe our business model hasn't been COVID focused? So you're
Okay.
seeing example after example of this.
Well, it almost sounds like companies are adopting some type of entrepreneurial role in a different sense, right? So that's normally something we associate with small businesses, but now we're thinking about companies themselves taking on some type of entrepreneurial role and rethinking what their products and services are, or how they can reappropriate or repurpose what their products and services are. Jessica,
Well,
what are
and
your thoughts on the discussion so far?
just to add to that quickly, some companies are doing that so that they can keep their workers
Yes.
employed, so that their workers can have a paycheck and be relevant to what's happening in the economy. And so that that is living into societal purpose right there.
A good point. Good point. Jessica.
Yeah, hi everybody. This has been a great discussion so far, and I'm really taken with this moment in time. Needless to say, if you're in this space and you've been a marketing professional or a communications professional, or you've been responsible for helping bring the outside into your organization, this is one of those chapters that we will look back on and think, where were we? What were we talking about? What were we right on? And what were we woefully off the mark on? So, I think it's kind of dangerous to opine a little bit because you don't want to come across as tone deaf in retrospect. But in the moment in time that we're in, I'm seeing some amazing things, very inspiring. I mean, especially having had experience in the food and retail supply chain, which I think all of us have on this podcast here today. The food industry in particular is so purpose driven. I mean, everyone has to eat, and one of the big existential challenges and crises we were facing before COVID-19 was, how are we going to feed the now 10 billion people projected to be on this earth without destroying the planet at the same time? And now we are in that discussion, but in an even more extreme way, because we are trying to make sure that the basic needs get met in Maslow's hierarchy. And, I couldn't help but go back and take a look at some of the data from the Edelman Trust Barometer 2020. That really always, from the longevity of that study and the longitudinal nature of the data that's been collected there, it's a really interesting snapshot of how people are feeling over time. And three big stats stick out to me right now, which is, this was pre-COVID-19. Less than 1 in 3 people believed that their families would be better off in 5 years' time. I mean, I would hate to take that poll today. I would also hate to look at the stat around, 1 in 5 respondents said that they didn't think that the system was working for them. And they also, 2/3 of them came together to say that they didn't have any confidence that our current leaders would be able to successfully address our country's challenges. Well, here we are. We are in the middle of a crisis which requires a reset. And I look at companies that are retooling and moving to this entrepreneurial spirit that you mentioned, which has been the purview of more of the startups, social enterprisey companies. But they're doing it because we are finally at this place where agility is trumping the day, where we have to move fast and we have to be running toward unknown objectives. And I think we were talking a little bit about this podcast, and are we calling it a compass? And companies can predict a direction. We can give an idea, and organizations and leaders can say, notionally, this is where we're headed. Where this will end up, we don't know. But one of my favorite sayings is, it'll all be okay in the end. And if it's not okay, it's not the end. We as society and as organizations and businesses will keep evolving. And I think actually we have the chance to reset some of those trust parameters in our society by doing the right thing. I'm very cheered by my former employer. Syngenta is making a hand sanitizer now with ag chemical facilities. I'm incredibly cheered with the daily posts of what Kroger and other retailers are doing to keep their folks on the front line, paying one-time bonuses, keeping people engaged, safe, and employed. So we are ready to pick up the pieces when we all come out of this, seemingly mind-numbing amount of isolation.
Yeah. Kelly, what are your thoughts on the discussion so far?
I think that I have been encouraged in the last 72 hours by what I'm seeing American business do. I have seen unlikely partners coming together. I have seen companies pulling on the S of ES&G. If we talk about environment, social, and governance, I've seen donations. I've seen incredible collaboration. And I think that this is a great time for communicators to be talking about that to all of their different stakeholder groups. I imagine in every corporation right now, communicators are slammed. They're so busy, but I want them to stop and reflect about the important role that they're playing right now to keep the wheels going, and what it will mean on the other side as business is redefined.
Devry, what are your thoughts?
Well, to add to what my colleagues have said, what I'm seeing is that the leaders they have the opportunity now to show up as taking human-centric approaches. Companies can humanize their brand through this process. And to Kelly's great point, the communicators are on the front lines of that. And where citizens are watching is, how are companies treating their employees? How are they engaging in the communities? And are they able to demonstrate empathy for what is happening? And we've talked about all of these good examples that are coming up, but truly that's my guidance to all of the communicators and even the marketers that are out there, is that first and foremost, take the people-centric, human-centric approach to how you're communicating with your stakeholders. Mm-hmm. And there's always a risk that through this process, communications or marketing folks may end up crossing a line to look as if they're taking or they're capitalizing on a certain situation. And what I'm seeing is that for the most part, our colleagues in the industry are doing a very good job thinking first and foremost about how they can ensure that they're coming across as understanding the gravity of the situation, pegging the fears and concerns that citizens are having, and using their brands to express the empathy that needs to be out there in this particular moment.
Okay, so one closing question, I'll open it up for all of you, right? We're talking here about so many exceptional examples that companies are using for taking the lead and being a compass, someone to look to, a sense of guidance here for society. But what do you say for companies that are just barely trying to hold on, but this is something that they're not doing? Or maybe not as visible and not as well as some of these other examples that we've heard here today. But what would you say? What would you offer as encouragement for companies that are simply trying to get through this week to help them to think about how they can connect to the other side? And I'll give all three of you a chance here to address that question. Jessica, we'll start with you.
Well, I think I would first and foremost say, hang on. Far be it for me to make a rodeo reference, but, this is going to be a lot longer than 8 seconds, but it's probably going to feel as extreme and as intense as, it can possibly be in this chapter of our time. I mean, something that as a communicator, we think a lot about is change and the change curve and how do people respond to change. And, typically leaders get to be a little further along on that change curve to help inspire and pull people through the depths of despair or that trough that happens with emotions. But we have this moment in time where our entire world is going through a massive change curve at the exact same time with very little line of sight on when it might all wrap up, which is also something that humans don't do very well with. I think, the human brain, it's been shown, can wrap itself around a beginning, a middle, and an end. Long periods of indefinite just churn are really tough for people to deal with. So, what the opportunity in that is to help your people, to Devry's point in the empathy space, to develop a resilience and a change mindset that is, let's just break it down in small pieces. Like, what do we have to do today to keep the trains running? What do we have to do for the week? I mean, we're doing it in my household right now. I've got 3 small kids that we are effectively homeschooling, and we divide it up into what's happening between now and lunch. And we really, as a society, have to help each other and understand, also giving people that grace and that moment to be able to express themselves and the frustration in what we're doing. But if I have confidence in business and if I have confidence in our nation's resilience and the fact that, frankly, the world is stepping up to lead, it's not just the US
Yeah.
who has stepped into this vacuum. Other countries who've gone before us are sharing their resources, sharing their best practices. Maybe we'll actually come back around to an even more globalized and connected society through this chapter. And for that, I wish everybody a wild ride in our 8-second plus rodeo. But just know that it's all going to be okay in the end. And if it's not okay, it's not the end. We will get there.
That's right. Devry, what are your thoughts? What would you recommend for companies trying to get through to the other side?
So for companies trying to get through to the other side, I would say understand the resources that are out there and that are coming. And this is where the communications teams and the public policy teams can meet. Um, it's important that companies are expressing their needs to government officials and also understanding what types of safety nets are coming their way. With Congress passing the bill just yesterday, I think it's important that they're looking through that bill. The teams are looking through the bill and understanding what types of resources may be coming their way. In addition, for those companies that may be better positioned to ride this out, maybe larger companies who are more capitalized, it's important for them to be thinking about their supply chain and the small and medium enterprises in that supply chain that are just trying to hang on, and what are some of the resources and safety nets they can provide to their suppliers, like ensuring that they're paying their suppliers because they have that capability to leverage. And so the other thing in terms of understanding the resources and expressing their needs to government is pull on your trade associations. I've seen the trade associations and the business groups stepping up in pretty significant ways to consolidate some of the concerns and to voice those concerns to public policymakers. So really understand the resources that are out there and use your resources.
Okay, great. And Kelly, let's end with
I
you.
Thanks, Craig. I'd keep it very simple. I'd pull my team together on a Zoom meeting or a Microsoft team meeting. I would have a Friday morning analysis. I would go through each of my stakeholder groups and I would really do a simple plan for that stakeholder group that I needed to motivate the most in my communication matrix. And I would work a week plan for next week on how I could motivate them. Maybe it's internal, maybe it's external, but I would really try to start, diving deep to make sure that I knew my different stakeholder groups and I knew where they were at.
Got it. Well, we're going to stop there. This has been a great conversation with our three senior fellows from the Marketing and Communication Center here at the Conference Board. Kelly Semrau, former Senior Vice President, Global Corporate Affairs, Communication, and Sustainability at S.C. Johnson. Devry Vorwerk, former Corporate Vice President, Global Corporate Affairs, Cargil, and CEO of DevryBV Sustainable Strategies. And Jessica Edelman, former Group Vice President of Corporate Affairs for the Kroger Company. I'm Craig Carroll, Communications Institute leader here at the Conference Board and lecturer in the Jones Graduate School of Business at Rice University and the Executive Director of the Observatory on Corporate Reputation. And thank you to all of you for listening. If you like this content, please subscribe to Influencers. You can find this program and several others from the Conference Board on a wide variety of topics at conference-board.org/podcasts on iTunes, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and many others. Thanks again for listening. I'm Craig Carroll, Communications Institute leader here with the Conference Board.
This has been Influencers from the Conference Board.